All right, let's dive right into this fascinating explainer. Today, we're unpacking a highly opinionated and deeply philosophical text. This source material argues that human belief is the fundamental architecture shaping not just traditional religion, but theoretical science as well. It's an explainer that's really going to push the boundaries of how we define faith, how we look at authority, and how we construct reality itself.
Section 1. The escapability of belief.
To anchor its argument, the source text forces us to look at our daily existence and compare it directly to the animal kingdom. On one side, we have us, humans. The author argues that for as long as humanity has existed, we've established reality for our children by passing down beliefs, faiths, and religions. But on the other side, look at animals, birds, apes, fish. The text observes that these creatures seemingly lack this kind of faith entirely. It strongly suggests that humans inherently must believe in something just to function and survive across generations.
Now, the author doesn't completely leave the animal kingdom out of the equation. The text concedes that animals might not entirely escape the concept of belief, but it defines their basic capacity for it super narrowly. For an animal, this basic belief might literally just be the ability to recognize the physical boundary between themselves and their environment. Right? It's a purely physical, instinctual level of belief. And that is sharply contrasted against our complex, psychological human need to build a shared reality.
Moving on to Section 2, defining faith and religion.
To really grasp the text's bolder claims, we have to look at how the author meticulously breaks down the human experience. Let's start with the word belief. According to the text, a belief is strictly defined as our understanding and interpretation of the natural world. It is totally grounded in what we can experience in the physical, everyday realm.
But here is the crucial split. The text carefully separates that natural belief from faith. Faith is categorized exclusively as what humans believe regarding the supernatural. It's a deliberate, hard line. Belief handles the natural world, while faith is entirely reserved for the unseen. Finally, to wrap up this three-part framework, the author defines religion. In this text, religion isn't just a set of historical doctrines. It's defined as a mechanism. It's the active way that you and your broader community express both those natural beliefs and those supernatural faiths. Basically, it's the outward communal expression of everything a group holds to be true.
Which brings us to Section 3, the priests of science.
Having set up those definitions, the source material asks us to take a hard look at where we actually place our faith today. The central thesis here is that wherever you have faith and belief, you inevitably get authority figures to manage them. The text specifically calls them ayatollahs or priests. And the striking argument is that this authority structure exists whether we call the institution religion or science. The author's drawing a direct, structural parallel between revered scientists and traditional religious leaders.
Let's see exactly how that plays out in Section 4, the case of Edward Witten.
The text takes this entire framework and applies it directly to modern theoretical physics. The author points to the renowned physicist Edward Witten and boldly labels him as the current supreme authority. In fact, the text literally calls him the greatest ayatollah of science at this moment. That is a powerful metaphor, suggesting his unquestioned standing in the scientific community essentially mirrors that of a high-ranking cleric.
And that sparks a genuinely compelling question from the text. The author openly wonders, does Edward Witten actually believe what he says in his own theoretical papers? They literally ask, how could he? It's a fascinating moment where the source actively questions the absolute certainty of theoretical science. They're asking if the creator of these incredibly complex theories truly believe they are a literal, exact map of the universe.
Let's dig deeper into that in Section 5, Limits of Human Perspective.
Using that question as a springboard, the author launches into several highly subjective critiques of Witten. First, they claim he fails to investigate the tangible consequences of his theoretical distinctions. Second, the text argues he's producing views from a strictly human perspective, perhaps totally missing those inherent blind spots. And third, a much more personal critique, they suggest Witten might just prefer the comfort of being admired for his achievements rather than risking tearing down the foundation of his own life's work.
Now, the text absolutely acknowledges that Witten and his followers clearly believe his papers, but it argues they do so largely because Witten, acting as that scientific ayatollah, is the one saying it. The author insists that thinking these highly complex theories describe objective, physical reality is, to use their words, far-fetched. They even express a hope that Witten himself realizes this.
This leads us to our final part, Section 6, Infinity in Vain.
Here, the text expresses a very specific hope for the future of theoretical physics. The The author wants towering figures like Witten to pivot away from what they view as far-fetched theories, and instead tackle the truly difficult foundational questions. Specifically, the source asks for strong, investigated answers as to why the definitions of core concepts, like numbers and infinity, are actually important enough to warrant producing perfect definitions for them. The argument is that we have to nail down the why behind these building blocks before we can ever claim to understand the wider universe.
And we are left with this stark, incredibly memorable final thought directly from the author. I hope he will not use the word infinity in vain. Wow. It is a brilliant philosophical warning against the casual use of the infinite in science. By echoing a classic religious commandment, not taking a holy name in vain, the author beautifully wraps up their central thesis, comparing science to religion. It leaves us to question the very limits of our own knowledge systems. So, think about this. At what exact point does our theoretical science end, and where does our blind belief begin?